Hello, my name is Rebekah Windschitl, and I'm a youth and family therapist with Youth Service Bureau. And today I'm going to talk about suicide awareness and prevention with a focus on military families. But first, a little bit about YSB. YSB is a nonprofit organization that has several different programs. We have our youth-focused family counseling, which is what I do. I'm a mental health therapist, and we provide counseling for youth and their families ages around 4 to about 25 years old. We also have diversion services where if kids get in trouble with the law, or maybe they're just having some really negative behaviors at home, they come to us for community service or different classes in chemical health and distracted driving, things of that nature, in order to help change behavior. Our youth and family education program is ones like this, where we provide services and educational opportunities throughout the community. We also have our school-based chemical health support. We are in school districts 833, 834, and 622. And we have chemical health specialists in the middle schools and in the high schools there as well. And then we have our military family program. This is where we work with the military, whether it's with the Minnesota National Guard or the Air Guard, to be able to provide educational opportunities to families and to be able to provide mental health support to those families as well. We have 3 different locations. We are in Cottage Grove, Stillwater, and Woodbury, and I do therapy in Stillwater and in the Woodbury offices. So again, today we're going to be talking about suicide awareness and prevention, focus on the military family population. So just some statistics about suicide within the military population. About an average of 20 veterans die by suicide each day. Among males, 68% of the deaths are from using firearms. And among females, 41% of the deaths result in firearm injury. The highest rates of suicide are among veterans ages 18 to 29, but 65% of all veterans who die by suicide are the ages of 50 or older. The reason these statistics are different is because the older population of veterans is just a larger amount of people. So 65% of all veterans who die by suicide were those ages of 50 or older. So this just gives you a little bit of a framework on what we're talking about today. So something that's really important to remember is that the purpose of suicide is not to die. The purpose of suicide is not to die. The purpose of suicide is to end the pain. If you talk to someone who is suicidal, if you tell them, I can get rid of all of your pain, they still want to live their lives. And so the whole purpose is to end the pain that they are in, not necessarily to end their lives. But they don't know of any other way to end that pain other than ending their lives. So some of the myths that come when we talk about suicide are depression is the only cause of suicide. And this is a myth, because there are a lot of causes of suicide. There are a lot of factors involved. And individuals who are depressed are not always suicidal. So just because someone struggles with depression does not mean they also have suicidal thoughts. It's dangerous to ask someone if they're considering suicide. This is also a myth. People who struggle with suicidal thoughts actually can get relief from talking about it with someone. I talk to individuals about suicide often, and it's a way of healing, a way of expressing how they feel and their concerns that they have. And so it's not dangerous to ask someone if they're considering suicide. If anything, it can open a channel of communication and support. Someone who is suicidal is determined to die. This is also a myth, because a lot of individuals who are suicidal are actually quite ambivalent about living or dying. They just know that they're in pain. And so when someone is at that space of suicide, providing the right support at that time can really help prevent suicide and prevent that suicide. And it's easy to spot someone who's thinking about suicide. This is also a myth. Individuals who struggle with suicide are similar to those who struggle with mental health issues in general, where when they're struggling, they like to put on a mask and pretend that everything is okay. And so sometimes it's a little bit difficult, which is why it's really good to know what those factors are, those signs and those symptoms are, so that you can keep an eye out for them. So some of the very direct warning signs for suicide are threatening to hurt or kill oneself, looking for ways to kill oneself, talking or writing about death, dying, or suicide, and self-destructive behavior, drug misuse, carelessly, handling weapons, things of that nature. Those are some very obvious direct warning signs that this individual is thinking of suicide. Some indirect signs: substance use or increased substance use, the feelings of hopelessness and purposelessness, outbursts of rage or anger or revenge seeking, increase in risky behaviors, socially withdrawing from other people. Some people say they have that feeling of being trapped and not able to get out. Increase in feelings of anxiety, dramatic changes in mood, struggles with sleep, guilt or shame or self-blame or remorse, those kinds of feelings. So those ones aren't always as obvious, but it's looking at when you notice a couple of those things are happening, it's recognizing that, hey, something's going on with this person. And even if they don't have any direct warning signs, when they show multiple of those indirect warning signs, it's a good thing to work on noticing that and taking steps. So some risk factors are a prior suicide attempt. Those individuals who have attempted suicide in the past are more likely to attempt in the future. Struggling with mental health conditions is another risk factor. And stressful life events, divorce, job loss, death of a loved one, loss of a relationship, different deployment experiences. With individuals who do not have very good coping skills and aren't able to manage the thoughts and the feelings that they experience when stressful life events happen, they're in a lot of pain. And like I said at the beginning, the goal with suicide is to end the pain. And so if they feel like they're in that much pain, is suicide the only way out, they wonder. So stressful life events can be a risk factor. And availability to lethal means of harm. So when you're dealing with an individual who's suicide, it can be a very impulsive emotional act. And so it's actually a risk factor to have a lethal means of harm open and available for a person that they can easily get to during an episode of emotion, intense emotion. There are also protective factors. So having positive coping skills, being able to manage those stressful situations in life, and having a reason for living or that sense of purpose. Feeling connected to others, having just that sense of belonging. Having that open communication around thoughts and feelings, being able to openly express to other people what you're experiencing at the time. And having a variety of positive relationships or other supportive systems. So it's that feeling connected, having that sense of belonging with individuals, with groups, with organizations, just within your community, being able to create that sense of unity. Access to mental health or substance use care when it's needed. Being able to address and deal with situations and stressful situations using those services and having them available. And the safe storage of potential means of suicide. Safely storing firearms, other kinds of weapons, medications, those sorts of things that are often used in suicide attempts, storing them safely and out of initial reach. So if you do have someone who you think might be, you notice those warning signs and they might be struggling with some suicidal thoughts, we talk about, do they have thoughts about harming themselves or thoughts of death or dying lately? What are their thought processes like lately? Do they have a plan? What are the details of the plan? And do you have the means to be able to carry out that plan? And is there an intent? How likely are you to carry out that plan? So these are some of the things we look at with suicide. But if you ever are worried about someone's safety, if you notice some of those warning signs and you're ever worried, it is okay to get them help. Whether you really truly think they'll go through with it or not, if you're concerned at all, it is okay for you to go and get them help, and it's encouraged for you to. So how do you do that? You tell the person that you're worried for their safety and you stay with them. Okay, you stay with them. You bring them to the emergency room or you call 911 and have them come to you, okay? I do not advise you to say, hey, I think you're suicidal, go to the emergency room, because it's not necessarily guaranteed they're going to go. So you staying with them and making sure that they stay safe and being that supportive person and caring person in their lives is really important. And then when you get there, a physician will evaluate and make the decision on the next steps moving forward. So moving forward in general, the whole goal is to reduce our risk factors and strengthen the protective factors on a regular basis. So we really want to focus on the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. We really want to come up with a balance. Now, it's not helpful necessarily to attack all of these at once because that gets overwhelming. So maybe just pick one. If you pick physical, maybe start with getting good sleep, eating well, and doing physical activity. Just picking one and starting to work on that and creating some sense of balance. Working on some problem-solving skills, really working on developing some coping skills for those stressful situations in life, and building those relationships and that ability to communicate your thoughts and feelings with others. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, this community collaboration and connection with others, having those relationships, having those connections with others in the community and that sense of belonging is really helpful in reducing risk factors and strengthening those protective factors. And so for the basic resources, the easiest resources we talk about is the Veterans Crisis Line. And that is the suicide prevention hotline number. But when you call that number, you press 1. And when you do that, you press 1, that'll direct you directly to the Veterans Crisis Line. So it's more specialized care for you. And there's also the suicide prevention text line, which is a possibility, which is texting home to 741-741. So I hope this information was helpful for you today, helping you be able to understand what to look out for, and when you do notice some of these signs, the steps that you can take to keep your family members safe.